just to be with y'all.
Well, good on you. And it is now 11 o'clock. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. So once again, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. With regard to announcements this morning, I'm just going to say, please read the e-newsletter. If you're not a subscriber, you can find the newsletter on the Center's Facebook page or visit our website to see what to expect for the rest of this month. Unhappily, we will not be able to celebrate Thanksgiving together as we have done for so many years. This is a heartache from here. I have so enjoyed this. Maybe next year. We'll just see how things go. But for right now, things are status quo at the center. As you'll see, you're welcome to come to the chapel. For that matter, you're welcome to come and visit me. But if you want to come and visit, please do let me know ahead of time so that A, you can be sure I'm here, although that's usually the case, or we can arrange to meet in such a way that doesn't endanger either one of us. So, we've done our chant. There will be no song, but there will be a poem later. Again, welcome, and let me just say, November is a month for the study of Raja Yoga, a spiritual path often called the yoga of meditation. As a Raja Yogi, you use ancient, proven spiritual techniques to quiet your mind and gain control of your attention. Regular daily practice of Raja Yoga increases your ability to concentrate and may lead to meditation. This can unite you with the divine presence, the source of your being, and liberate you from the cycle of rebirth and death. In the vocabulary of the Raja Yogi, this state of liberation is called kaivalya, independence, not dependent on anything. Just imagine that. Now, as we know, God is the causeless cause. The divine presence is the causeless cause, not dependent on anything. And so here is a poem from St. Thomas Aquinas. It is titled, "You Cannot Be What God Is Not." All are having a relationship with God. A pear taken from a limb and set in a bowl, surely it is talking to its Lord, and happy that it is being honored for its life, and somehow knowing that soon it will be returning to him. We use words like returning. Think about that. Inherent in that word is separation, and separation from God is never really possible. What can you be that he is not? You cannot be what I am not, my Lord once said to me. You cannot be what I am not, my Lord once said to me. St. Thomas Aquinas is so clever. You cannot be what I am not. The corollary for that is, you can be what I am, and that is independent. As I said, that is a poem by St. Thomas Aquinas. It's from the book Love Poems from God by Daniel Ladinsky. This morning, our topic is Out on a High Limb, Patanjali's Yoga. Last Sunday, we talked about how Raja Yoga integrates with the practice of Karma Yoga. Discussion of Patanjali's Yoga Sutra touched on the first two limbs, techniques or methods of his methodology, the Yamas, restraints, and the Niyamas, observances. The purpose of the Yamas is to help you clean up your act, to withdraw from a self-centered, confrontational relationship with the world. The Niyamas are at the same time guiding you toward a more positive way of living. Regular, thoughtful practice of the Yamas and Niyamas offers you a life that is calmer, more inward focused. From there, you are able to better understand and practice the next four limbs of Patanjali's yoga. Patanjali says your self-effort can achieve this result. Yoga is the control of thought waves in the mind. That's from the Aims of Yoga, Chapter 1, it's Aphorism 2. This morning, we will explore and discuss limbs 3, 4, 5, and 6 of Patanjali's system. Asana, your seat or posture for practice. Pranayama, control of your life force. Pratyahara, withdrawal from the experience of sense objects. And dharana, the ability to concentrate your attention. All spiritual aspirants can make much faster progress when they use these techniques. Devotees who practice them intensely may, after some years, find themselves so far out on a high limb of yoga that they can no longer take seriously what they once believed was the ground of their existence, which we call samsara, or the world, the experience of misery and pain. Here's a little background about what the thought waves in the mind actually are. It's from In Praise of the Goddess. I'm going to repeat what I just said. Here's a little background about what the thought waves in the mind actually are. This is from In Praise of the Goddess, a commentary on the Devi Mahatmyam by Devadatta Kali. Devadatta Kali is a disciple of Swami Prabhavananda and a remarkable scholar of the Devi Mahatmyam and other texts. So this is a quote. Matter perceived as solid objects in space and time is in fact a relatively stable form of energy, highly organized into systems called fields of many kinds of subatomic particles or waves. Waves is vibration, I'm interpolating. So they're made of many kinds of subatomic particles or waves that are themselves made of still smaller quanta of energy. Overall, quantum physics and Shakta philosophy, the philosophy of study of the divine feminine, Shakta philosophy. Overall, quantum physics and Shakta philosophy agree in viewing the physical universe as a manifestation of energy, just as vibrating quanta of energy form ever more complex units of matter to produce the entire cosmos. So the three gunas combine and recombine with increasing complexity to structure the material universe and its living beings. Scientists claim that the amount of energy in the universe is constant. Late in the 19th century, Swami Vivekananda wrote that the Divine Mother is, quote, the sum total of the energy in the universe. I'm going to repeat that quote. Swami Vivekananda wrote in the late 19th century that the Divine Mother is the sum total of the energy in the universe. While science continues to probe deeper for the ultimate simplicity, the perfect unbroken symmetry before the beginning of creation, before matter crystallized out of energy, Shakta philosophy has known all along that the ultimate form of matter is energy, and that the ultimate form of energy is consciousness. For those of you who aren't familiar, Swami Yogeshananda is the founder of this center, now retired and 97 years old. He's in Trabuco Canyon, but the monastery in Southern California. So I just introduce him because I'm about to give a quote from him. As Swami Yogeshananda was fond of saying, consciousness is primary and not plural. And, as the sage Vashishta told Rama, all that you experience is nothing more than a vibration of consciousness. Now, that's the end of the quotes for the time being. Your individual awareness is a reflection of that consciousness in your body-mind complex. You experience this awareness. I'm going to start again. Your individual awareness is a reflection of consciousness in your body-mind complex. You experience this awareness as an unending stream of perceptions, emotions, and thoughts. Through habit, genetic predisposition, and your training as a child, you believe that what you perceive is reality, your world and universe. According to Patanjali, this is your inborn ignorance. He says this ignorance will continue as long as you're unable to control and focus your attention. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras prescribe 6 methods to achieve control of your awareness, which has been defined as your perceptions, emotions, and thoughts. That's our awareness. Our perceptions, emotions, and thoughts are the contents of our awareness. This includes memories, it includes projections into the future, and so on. But all of that is within the realm of perceptions, emotions, and thoughts. Patanjali gathers these 3 categories of perceptions, emotions, and thoughts. Patanjali gathers these 3 categories together and summarizes them as thought waves, in Sanskrit vrittis, in your mind stuff, chitta. Now, your mind stuff is not confined to your head. Your mind stuff is both gross and subtle throughout your entire body-mind complex, and there's evidence that it exists actually outside your body-mind complex in an etheric, so to speak, egg that surrounds you. So these three categories of perceptions, feelings, and thoughts are categorized or summarized by Patanjali as thought waves, vrittis, in your mind stuff. Vrittis is a form of vibration. The literal translation is whirlpool. But as we'll hear next week, Swami Vivekananda very carefully parses it out, the word, parses it out to mean vibration. When practiced together, Patanjali's 6 methods can create a calm mind, a strong, poised body, and a tranquil way of life, which are the prerequisites for meditation. Long practice of meditation can unite you with the divine presence, the source of your being, and liberate you from the cycle of rebirth and death. In the vocabulary of the Raja Yogi, this state of liberation is called kaivalya, independence. So once you have learned to control the vrittis, the thought waves in your mind stuff, and your body becomes calm, your mind, your attention becomes calm, then you perceive this other state of existence you actually experience. So just because some of you weren't here last week, and then of course it's always good to do a little review, here's a quick review of Patanjali's first 2 methods. Yama means the restraint of tendencies that keep you at odds with the world. Yama means the restraint of tendencies that keep you at odds with the world. When you are habitually harmful to yourself, to others, or to the environment, when you are deceitful, when you are greedy or selfish, when you are immoderately sensual, or when you are covetous, calmness of mind is utterly impossible. So the yamas are the very first instruction of Patanjali. In order to gain a calm mind that is able to focus its attention, you must restrain these tendencies to be harmful, deceitful, greedy, immoderately sensual, or covetous. To move forward in Raja Yoga, you restrain these tendencies and instead practice nonviolence, truthfulness, non-stealing, moderation in all sensuality, and non-possessiveness. So that's the first instruction from Patanjali. The second is niyama. These practices broaden yama to include your internal world of body, mind, and spirit. As a Raja Yogi, you make daily determined efforts to eliminate all forms of inner and outer impurity. Now, does that mean that this happens all at once? No, no, no. No more than your restraint of the tendencies mentioned in as the yamas happens all at once. But you make daily, if you're really practicing Raja Yoga, which Swami Vivekananda defines as control of your psyche, psychic control, you do your best to eliminate all forms of inner and outer impurity. You make daily efforts to be content with the circumstances of your life. You make daily efforts to prefer the good over the pleasant, The good is that which is auspicious for your forward progress. The pleasant is that which is merely a distraction and will keep you at best on a level playing field or even drag you downward. So you make daily efforts to prefer the good over the pleasant, and this is a moment-to-moment activity. You make daily efforts to learn from sacred texts. You study the scriptures and from your own weaknesses and mistakes. And this is very instrumental in this practice, and that's why it so sweetly integrates with karma yoga. You make a daily effort to offer the results of all your practice of yoga to the divine presence. So the yogi, in practicing the niyamas, does this. She or he practices purity, contentment, self-discipline, self-study, and surrender of all thought waves and actions to your chosen ideal. So this is a review of the first two. If you have questions about them or comments about them, please hold them for a little bit rather than interrupt us here. I want to go on to Patanjali prescribes 4 more methods that all are practiced simultaneously. None of these are practiced sequentially. You begin with the idea that I'm going to practice the Yamas and Niyamas, and along with them, I'm going to learn asana. Asana, which means, this means seat, specifically your seat for meditation. Hatha Yoga's use of that word as an extension of Patanjali's term to include many other yogic exercises. These poses, along with the proper posture for sitting in concentration and meditation, these poses, which are also called asanas, done regularly with proper guidance, they will result in a poised, flexible, healthy body. The reason for generating such a body is not just to have a better life, although you will have a better and even longer life, but such a body allows you to sit still comfortably for an hour or even longer, practicing concentration and meditation. So the purpose of asana and the asanas that are an extension of Patanjali's term are to generate a body that is poised, flexible, and healthy, that allows you to sit comfortably for an hour or even longer, practicing concentration and meditation. Now, does this mean that we all need to do this? Of course not. This intensity is for someone who has as the center of their spiritual practice Raja Yoga. But it's the more we can lean into this, the more we can lean in that direction, the more successful we will be at concentration and meditation. The fourth of Patanjali's methods is pranayama. Yama, as we've heard before, means restraint. Prana, often translated as breath, is actually the subtle life force that causes the lungs to breathe and all of the body's other organs of action and perception, to function. So prana doesn't mean just breath. It means the subtle life force that causes the lungs to breathe and all of the body's other organs to function. Therefore, pranayama is the regulation of your life force. Prana, life force; yama, restraint or regulation. This is done either consciously through the practices of pranayama, which are inherently dangerous. They may lead to either physical or psychic ailments if not done under very careful guidance. So we have to be careful about that. So this pranayama is done either consciously or, and this is the way the Ramakrishna Order Swamis recommend it, pranayama happens as a spontaneous outcome of other exercises. For instance, while practicing concentration or meditation, your breathing will slow and may even stop for a time. This natural pranayama happens because breathing is energetically tied to thinking, and fewer thoughts arise during concentration and meditation. That slowing of thoughts and other actions of the body-mind complex. I'm going to repeat that. Natural pranayama happens because breathing is energetically tied to thinking, and fewer thoughts arise during the practice of concentration and meditation. That slowing of thoughts and other actions of the body-mind complex, the citta, your mind stuff, is the beginning of the control of thought waves. It is often accompanied by a feeling of mild to intense bliss. Now, this is a wonderful thing. Bliss is a wonderful thing. And yet, it is a possible obstacle or impediment, because it's easy to stop at that bliss and think, oh, I've achieved much because I've achieved this bliss, because of your accomplishment of pranayama. But it is only a way station. It isn't that you shouldn't enjoy it, but you must not become convinced that you've achieved much because you've achieved that. As we'll see in the fifth of Patanjali's methods, this bliss is also a sense experience. And pratyahara, the fifth method, means withdrawal of the senses. The senses are naturally outreaching. So it is easy to become addicted to pleasant experiences of the outside world or even of the inner world. And when we do get addicted to those pleasant experiences, we may get stuck like a fly to flypaper. We are in the habit of getting stuck. We may even think it's a good thing. Oh, I'm stuck in a good place. This is a good habit. Well, it is emphatically not if you wish to practice Raja Yoga. It is not a good habit to become addicted and stuck to experiences of the senses, no matter how refined. The arts are also, and science is also a very high expression of sense objects. But the intuitive world that is beyond the body-mind complex cannot be impeded by your enjoyment, even of the most refined of pleasant experiences. As a student of yoga, you are taught to witness all these sensations as just one level of existence, an outer level of existence, a more gross level of existence. You are learning to turn your attention away from all sensory stimulation and explore the universe within yourself. You must become adept at pratyahara, separation of yourself from the realm of sense objects, in order to move on to the next step. The next step, of course, is number 6, dharana. I'm just going to pause for a moment. If you become accomplished at pratyahara and learn to focus your attention inside, what happens next is, in a sense, spontaneous. You will begin to concentrate because you'll find something there to concentrate on. But this business of becoming adept at pratyahara, separating yourself from the realm of sense, both externally triggered sense experiences, and also our ability to remember and become involved with sense experiences mentally, emotionally, and even, as I said, the experience of bliss that comes with the accomplishment of the first 4 of Patanjali's methods. So you must become adept at pratyahara in order to move on to the next step, which is dharana. Patanjali gives special emphasis to the ability to concentrate, dharana. He says it will determine a yogi's level of achievement. Let me repeat that. Patanjali gives special emphasis to the ability to concentrate, dharana. He says this ability will determine a yogi's level of achievement. Now, concentration is defined very clinically, so to speak, by Patanjali. It's the ability to hold the same thought or the same thought wave for 12 seconds. Concentration begins with your ability to hold the same thought wave, whether it's a mantra, whether it's a visualization, whether it's watching your breath, whichever that is. Concentration is defined as beginning. You achieved concentration when you can do that for 12 seconds, uninterruptedly by any other thought wave. It's quite an achievement. As you move beyond this, your ability to meditate, the beginning of meditation becomes when you have achieved concentration for 12 times 12 seconds, 144 seconds, or 2 minutes, 24 seconds. It's being able to hold one thought or system of thought, as Patanjali defines it in chapter 2 of the Yoga Sutras. Thoughts around a particular object or focus of your attention. Meditation begins at 2 minutes, 24 seconds. So that nothing outside that one great thought or that system of thoughts about one particular object or thought wave continues for 2 minutes, 24 seconds. That's the beginning of meditation. This ability to concentrate is truly key. As Swami Vivekananda wrote in the introduction to his book Raja Yoga, how has all the knowledge in the world been gained but by concentration of the powers of the mind? I'll repeat that. How has all the knowledge in the world been gained but by the concentration of the powers of the mind? There is no limit to the power of the human mind. The more concentrated it is, the more power is brought to bear on one point. That is the secret. The yogis tell us that when you're able to concentrate on one thought wave or one system of thought waves about a particular object, the truth and the meaning of that spontaneously reveals itself to you. Why spontaneously? Because that knowledge already exists. This is what Swamiji means by there is no limit to the power of the human mind, because the human mind, when united with the Akasha, with all knowledge that exists, ever did exist, or ever will exist, that truth of whatever it is that you're focusing on, whether it be a spiritual truth or some particular object of your attention, will reveal itself to you. So that's the end of the quote from Swami Vivekananda. To perform an asana elegantly, or to watch the breath or chant a mantra without interruption, to distinguish the real from the unreal, requires this one-pointed control of your attention. To perform an asana elegantly, to watch the breath or chant a mantra without interruption, to distinguish the real from the unreal, requires this one-pointed control of one's attention. Patanjali says dharana is the gateway to freedom. Patanjali says this ability to concentrate is the gateway to freedom, to liberation. Beyond that gate, as you become more and more adept at Patanjali's 6 methods of self-effort, you will surely experience daily life and its miseries very differently. After some years of practice, you may find yourself so far out on a high limb of yoga that you can no longer take seriously what you once believed was the ground of your existence. As Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, yoga is the breaking of contact with pain. So I'm going to read that. Beyond that gate of the ability to concentrate, beyond that gate, as you become more and more adept at Patanjali's 6 methods of self-effort, and of course, as your ability to concentrate increases, your ability to perform and do those other 5 steps also increases. So as you become more and more adept at Patanjali's 6 methods of self-effort, you will surely experience daily life and its miseries very differently. After some years of practice, you may find yourself so far out on a high limb of yoga that you can no longer take seriously what you once believed was the ground of your existence. As Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, yoga is the breaking of contact with pain. So let's remind ourselves what is the definition of yoga? The word yoga has two meanings. They're mirror images of one another. Yoga first means, it's related to the word yoke in English. It means union, yoking yourself to the divine presence, becoming in a unified state of consciousness with the divine presence. That's one meaning. The mirror image of that is detachment. Yoga also means detachment. It means detachment from all that limits you from that unified state of consciousness with the divine. So when it says that you're far out on a high limb of yoga, you're in at least occasional conscious union with the divine presence, and you feel a great detachment from the worldly life that was once what you believed was the ground of your existence, which we call samsara. As Sri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, yoga is the breaking of contact with pain, breaking of contact with samsara. Now, as you have heard, you can learn to control your awareness and thereby transform your life. Yet most of us do not. Does that mean we're bad people? No, it doesn't mean that at all. There's a very powerful reason why we don't. Our great American sage, Mark Twain, made this observation. Your road is everything that a road ought to be, and yet you will not stay in it half a mile, for the reason that little, seductive, mysterious roads are always branching out from it on either hand. And as these curve sharply also, and hide what is beyond, you cannot resist the temptation to desert your own chosen path and explore them. I'm going to read this again. It's such a beautiful observation on why, and Arjuna even asks a question about it to Sri Krishna in the Gita, which results in Krishna addressing him one of the few times in the Gita as my child. Your road, Mark Twain said or wrote, your road is everything that a road ought to be, and yet you will not stay in it half a mile, for the reason that little, seductive, mysterious roads are always branching out from it on either hand. And as these curve sharply also, and hide what is beyond, you cannot resist the temptation to desert your own chosen path and explore them. As I remarked in all of these talks recently, this is not meant as personal instruction for any one of you. It is something for you to take in. It is something for you to hear and then process. The process is called in Sanskrit manana. Take it into your mind and see what, if anything, of it applies and appeals to you. Patanjali's way is a difficult way. It is the second most difficult after Advaita or non-dual Jnana Yoga. Raja Yoga, to practice it fully, requires that you change your life and focus your attention virtually entirely there, except for sustaining yourself. But that doesn't mean that some of it cannot apply to each of us as we pursue any path. To learn to do our hatha yoga and to sit properly for meditation benefits everyone. To learn to withdraw yourself from the world of the senses, which means that you're practicing pranayama, you're controlling your life force and not letting it go outward and dissipate itself. And then be able to practice concentration. This will benefit us, benefit each of us in our spiritual practice. But as Mark Twain observed, so with this wonderfully understanding wry humor that he has, we are so easily distracted. So we have a good amount of time. Are there all of these wonderful comments and questions that you have about what you've heard or anything else that pertains to this? This is where we do this together. This is where we share one with ourselves, with one another, and function as a congregation, even though we're doing it by this remarkable Zoom technology. Anything at all from anyone?
Well, I sure do like that poem. That will be in the top notes, right?
Yes, it will.
Good, okay.
Yes, St. Thomas Aquinas is so intelligent, and he's so articulate, and he puts things so well.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
You cannot be what God is not. Thank you, Cindy. It's in the talk notes, yes. Anything else from anyone? Any questions about these six methods of self-effort prescribed by Patanjali?
I had a question.
Yes, dear.
I was thinking about pratyahara and what you were saying about artists and scientists. Now, when I'm painting or writing, which is what I do, and you said that this sense of you still gain pleasure from art, so like you think it's an innocent activity to be, at a museum or looking at paintings or even making your own painting, say. And, as I'm concentrating, I'm just trying to remind myself that I'm not the doer. But I still, it's like you don't want to feel guilty for.
Heavens, no, dear. You used the word innocent. It is innocent. There's no harm in it. As long as you are not harming others, as long as you're adhering to those principles in the Yamas, then there's no harm, and it is innocent. But we just have to recognize, as long as I am outward directed, it is a limitation. If I wish to access, if I wish to become my unlimited self, that which is dependent on nothing, then I have to turn my attention, at least part of the time, to these inner pursuits. But it is this going to a museum or painting a picture or writing a poem or writing a story, it's all innocent. There is this, oh, if you want to read about the innocence, read Hafiz, read Saint Francis of Assisi, read Saint Teresa of Avila, read Tukaram. These pursuits in the outside world, as long as they're not harmful, they are indeed innocent.
Well, I just worry because, there is sometimes a sense that, you start attaching importance to yourself because, I did that,
Oh,
and
yes. Oh, yes.
and then you just identify with, I'm the painter of that painting, or I'm the writer of that essay, and then, just because everything is so marketized, you're just, that becomes like your trade, and you're just like, where's the purity of the work of art? Is the vision.
Well, now we have some glimpse from what you've just said, dear, of why these thought waves are called vritti, whirlpool. They can suddenly suck us down. They can suddenly, but as soon as we become aware that that's the direction of our attention, we have the opportunity to recapture it and say, as you said earlier, I remind myself I am not the doer. I don't yet know it, but I take a stand for it. I take a stand that Krishna is telling us the truth, that the scriptures, many scriptures, Yajnavalkya in the Big Forest Upanishad, the Brihadaranyaka, he makes a great point that you're not the doer. So, and of course, the Devi Mahatmyam, there was a quote from the Devi Mahatmyam or an essay or a book on the Devi Mahatmyam in the beginning. The Devi Mahatmyam says, Mother's doing everything. It may seem to us that we're doing it, but in fact, that's because we are an instrument of Mother. We are an aspect of Mother. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I think you can celebrate your innocence, my dear. I truly do. Rather than worry about, just celebrate your innocent distractions, your innocent pleasures, and say, but that's not all I am. I'm more than that. Anyone else?
Brother Shankara? Brother
Yes.
Shankara?
Yes.
Wonder when and how this multitasking became a trait that started becoming, emphasized or celebrated and eroded in our ability to concentrate, I think. And how do we reverse that?
Well, let's just recognize it for what it was, an economic strategy of people who wanted to make more money. They got you to do two people's jobs, called it multitasking, and paid you just one person's salary. That's exactly why it started in the 1970s. I saw it happen. I was a consultant to management at that time. And I saw, one of the people that I worked closely with at one time, a very senior consultant on compensation, said one Friday evening as we were gathered in his office having a little wine and cheese and so on, he said, I'm beginning to hate my clients because of their greed. And so the multitasking went hand in hand with downsizing, right sizing, all those words. This is where multitasking got started. So see it for what it is. and say, I can cooperate or not as it's auspicious for me. No, it's best to concentrate on one thing at a time.
Brother Shankar,
Yes, Umaji.
Haji, thank you. I was thinking when you mentioned non-harming anyone, or that is the most fundamental principle in every religion, not only in our Vedanta, in Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, even Christianity, that Jesus says that if somebody slaps you on one cheek, offer the second cheek.
Mhm.
And that is so profound that harmlessness, non-injury, or ahimsa is mentioned in almost all religions as number one principle. And thinking about that, I think it contains most other principles within itself, that you should not, by words, by thoughts, or by action, hurt anyone. And not only that, but Christianity, I think, goes a step forward, that you be good to others, not only non-harming, but forgiving, and also accepting that as a lesson in humility.
Yes,
So,
if someone demands your coat, give him your cloak also.
and that is also Gandhiji, when he was growing up, he compared that statement of Jesus with one of the old poem written by a Indian poet, in which it says that if somebody comes to your house begging for something, you not only give what he asks, but add to it something more out of your own sweet will.
Yes.
That, makes me think that how all religions, why do they emphasize non-violence?
Well, I can tell you very clearly, dear,
Yes.
this principle of ahimsa, as long as we are practicing any kind of violence, as long as we find ourselves at odds with the world, that we must deal with the world in such a way as to be harmful to ourselves, to others, or to the environment, then we are far, far from any ability to have the calmness of mind to see the reality. When we're antagonistic, when we're angry, when we're self-serving, and therefore we take, and if we take, we're taking by either by stealth or by violence. So this is why there's simply no possibility of understanding the principles of spirituality or religion if you have this antagonistic, at odds with the world way of being. So that's why it's principle number one.
Thank you. Thank you. Makes sense, yes.
Brother Shankara.
Yes, and thank you, Uma. Yes, Keith.
Something's been going on with me lately, and this kind of relates to the concentration piece. Is that the mind, if you give it too much to chew on, you'll never be able to concentrate on anything. I've had to step away from, because I'm kind of a news junkie, I've had to step away from that, because this whole election and everything that's going on in the world is just,
oh Lord, yes, Keith.
I'm not one that gets anxiety like ever. I handle stress very well, but it's just starting to wear me out. And so it was there's a an Indian mystic named Sadhguru that I check out here and there. And he relates the mind's chatter to diarrhea, because if you keep giving yourself bad food, then you're going to have diarrhea. And if you keep feeding your brain with all of these things that are not harmonious,
Yes.
your mind's just going to chatter.
It's going to.
Yeah, I think we all know what the next word is.
Projectile. Yeah.
It's going to, and so like it's very hard to, in this world with all the information at our fingertips and all the connectivity and all the divisiveness going on, to be able to stay engaged in a normal manner that is considered normal and be able to have any sort of concentration, because your mind is going to digest and spit out what you give to it. It's garbage in, garbage out. So working on that, it's very, very difficult. But yeah, just wanted to share that.
It's like that old Native American proverb: you have two wolves within you. One is very benign and helpful and wants to do well in the world. The other is angry and predatory. And so the child asks the grandfather, who's told him this story about the two wolves. He says, "Well, which one will win, Grandpa?" And the grandfather says, "The one you feed." And so we have to be careful what we feed the mind, no doubt, because as you said, garbage in, garbage out. And it's so like Sadhguru to compare it to diarrhea. He's very plain spoken and wryly funny. But the neurologists and psychologists will tell us that right now, the anxiety that they've experienced in the body, in the collective subconscious, the collective consciousness, they said they've never seen it so high. It's off the charts, and the level of depression being experienced by people is also unprecedented. And so this is a very, very difficult time. In the words of the Star Wars characters, there is a very great disturbance in the Force. And so it's not a wonder that we're having trouble focusing our attention. And you're right, Keith, we have to be careful how much we consume of the anxiety-producing material. Otherwise, it will give us anxiety. No two ways about it. And mental diarrhea. Beautifully observed, Keith. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hey, Brother Shankara.
Yes, James.
I've been reading this book, and if I could share a little paragraph
Please.
here that relates what we've been talking about. It says, what it means to live spiritually is not participate in this, is not, let me start over again, I'm sorry. What it means to live spiritually is to not participate in this struggle. So what is referring to is struggle of trying to keep our life together as we think it should, you know, based on our past experiences and history of who I am, and hang on to that. Everything kind of goes through our fingers like sand. But it says it means that the events that happen in the moment belong to the moment. They don't belong to you. They have nothing to do with you. You must stop defining yourself in relationship to them and just let them come and go. Don't allow events to leave impressions inside of you. If you find yourself thinking about them later on, just let them go.
Yes, that is wisdom. That is pure wisdom. And it's distilled in what is perhaps Jesus's shortest teaching. Be passers-by. Don't get caught like a fly on fly paper in things of the moment and things that you experience. Just pass them by, let them go. They are not you. And most oftentimes, our belief that they somehow have to do with us is just a form of our ignorance. So what a beautiful thing you just read, James. That's just it. Let them go. Don't
Yeah,
identify with them and let them go.
yeah, I speak for myself. You know, we sometimes just try to hang on to who we think we are
Oh, amen.
based upon we live in the past.
Well,
You know,
that's it. We have our habits that come from we know not where. They may come from past lives, but in any case, we have our habits. We have our genetic predispositions, and we have this membership that was given to us, as Don Juan Matus called it, this membership that we're taught as a child. And all of that is very powerful. And we're taught that things that happen to us are important. And if somebody says a bad word to us, we need to take umbrage and retaliate rather than present the other cheek. And, it's so that you just read was just pure wisdom, pure wisdom. Thank you, James.
Can I just ask a follow-up to that?
Of course.
About being passersby. I, there's the sense that we are not that, but as you were saying earlier, it's this sense of resisting the pain. As one yogini, I forget her name, she was with the Ramakrishna order, Pravarjika, I think her name is Divyananda, actually.
Uh-huh.
And he said suffering is the result of pain, but the resistance times the resistance to it. And so, when you see someone who hurts you, or, who's maybe physically violent with you even, it's like you still want, I don't know, it's like you have to also remind yourself that you are that at the same time. I don't know if that makes.
Oh, you cannot allow yourself to be a doormat. You cannot allow other people to. When Jesus said, if someone strikes you on the cheek, present the other cheek. You can only do that from strength, not from weakness.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't genuinely feel it, if you don't genuinely have that impetus, the best we can do is to either withdraw from the situation. A Tai Chi and martial arts instructor that I studied with at one time said, if someone wants to be violent with you, run. Don't get into an altercation. But if you can't, then you have to stand up for yourself, because otherwise you will feel badly about yourself. You will feel, and as Swami Vivekananda said, contraction is death, expansion is life. It is better to defend yourself and make a mistake in that direction than it is to make a mistake in the other direction. If you can do as Christ said, if you can simply not take the blow on one cheek personally and offer the other cheek, if you can, when someone demands your coat, offer them your cloak also. Wonderful, wonderful. But you can only do that from strength. You can't do it from self-abasement. and weakness. So very good follow-up question. Yes,
Brother Shankara,
yes, dear.
could you expand a little bit more when you said you can only do that from strength and not from abasement? Could you a little bit expand on that one?
Where does strength come from? Strength comes from within. It comes from knowing who we truly are. It comes from understanding what Krishna says in chapter 2 of the Gita. You cannot be harmed. The you of you, the truth of you, cannot any way be harmed. You can't be cut by a sword. You can't be wetted by water. You can't be dried by the wind. You can't, none of these things. But for us to really embody that comes from spiritual practice, and that's where the strength comes from. If we allow ourselves to be made a doormat, taken advantage of, out of weakness, then we're going to feel badly about ourselves. We're going to feel angry. We're going to feel resentful. We're going to feel that we're weak and not able to take care of ourselves. So we have to, if we wish to play the game of life well, we have to train ourselves. And this is why Vivekananda used the metaphor of football for the game of life. People who play football, soccer, extremely well are highly trained. Highly trained. So we train ourselves to these things. And if we're lazy about our self-training, then we won't have the strength to play the game well. So this is why that word vritti, that means whirlpool, is such an apt thing. These thought waves that arise in our minds often have a downward impetus. And so we have to resist them and constantly emphasize the truth, constantly emphasize the ideal. And as was pointed out earlier by Jim Garvine, when things happen to us, don't identify with them. To the extent that you can, just let them go and say, I am not that.
Okay. It has to happen in the moment for it to be effective.
Yes, it does. And if it does happen in the moment, you're so right, Neera. If it does happen in the moment, then it doesn't persist afterwards. But you know, this is difficult for us.
Thank you.
Life in the world is not easy.
Oftentimes it happens later on after the event has passed, and that does not help, because
No.
you've already gone a certain way that you shouldn't have done.
Yeah, but then we can't feel badly about that either, Neera.
Right.
We, as Vivekananda says, we fall 1,000 times, we rise 1,001 times. In learning to play the game of life, in learning to play the game of football, does someone skin their knees? Do they get bruises? Do they get a bloody nose? Yes, they do. No one trains to play the game of life well without making mistakes. If you play it safe, you never learn to play. So you have to play, you have to get out on the field of life, and you have to be willing to get the bruises, the skinned knees, the bloody nose. We have to be willing to make mistakes. We learn by doing. Read chapter 15 of the Gita, the field and its the field and its knower. You know, this is the field of action. We've come to the mango grove, as Sri Ramakrishna says. Now, bitter or sweet, we must eat the mangoes. Thank you, Neera. That was good. Good follow-up.
Brother Shankara, this is Haima.
Yes, Haima.
When Divya said suffering, it just resonated what Alistair Sharer, who translated Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Alistair Sharer, his name. I'm sure you're familiar with him. Said that we suffer because we live in ignorance, and we are ignorant of our real nature. In order to find our real nature, meditation is the only key. And that's how you find your wholeness of you. Then everything becomes, it all falls in place. They all become easier to deal with, like showing other cheek and all these things. Then they become much easier.
Well, because you have the strength of self-knowledge. Yes, exactly.
You develop the forbearance and equanimity, all these virtues.
All the characteristics that Sri Krishna defines as Shita Prajna.
Exactly. He translates it. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, meditation is the only key. Almost all scriptures are leading to meditation, silence, go deep into ourselves.
Right.
What I read, every scripture is leading to meditation.
Yes.
To comment. And then Keats, I like the Keats mental diarrhea. If we watch the news, we lose our wholeness. Actually, we lose our really wholeness. Just, my friend said she uses TV as a salt in the food, just a little bit. Of food. I liked that, and I kind of try to practice, remember her all the time, salt in the food. So if we watch too much, it does cause mental diarrhea. He's right.
Well, you know, the thing that we have to remember is we are in control.
Yes.
As long as we really don't yet know that I am not the doer, then we have to hold firmly to the belief that I'm in control of where I put my attention.
That's right.
Just because the news media says, you have to watch this, this is so important. Eyes here, attention here. You do not have to cooperate. You do not have to cooperate.
Yeah.
They're in the business of selling things. That's why they are so desperate to have your attention and your eyes on that screen, so that you're exposed to what they're selling. That's how they make their living. Well and good.
Thank you.
But it's a form of madness, and we do not have to cooperate. Thank you, Haima. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Brother Shankara?
Yes.
Using the gastrointestinal symptoms in a different way. Sometimes I think diarrhea is better than constipation. So it's better to let go than hold on to things.
Well, yeah, you're right. If we're constipated, if we're just, that's that paralysis. And, you know, Sadhguru was being wryly funny when he said mental diarrhea. But you're right. It's better to do that than to be plugged up.
Isn't that something, suppression and repression?
Yes, suppression and repression will lead to that kind of mental diarrhea. You're right. I mean, not mental diarrhea, that constipation, mental constipation.
There is also a term for that in medicine.
Yes.
Constipation with overflow incontinence, overflow diarrhea. So you get so impacted then there's a little bit of leakage around the impaction.
Ay, 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 ay.
For all these-
Oh, wait.
Sounds very painful.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's awful.
So we are directed by Patanjali to these 6 methods that are practiced not sequentially but together, and with whatever intensity we can bring to it over a long period of time. But what happens is, over that long period of time, after 5 or 7 years have passed, and you've been practicing however intensely you may, you look back and you say, oh, this has really made a difference. This has really made a difference. My life is different. Patanjali was right. And anytime we can do what is useful to improve our concentration. And Divya mentioned earlier painting or music or these things. These are ways of focusing your attention also. Vivekananda said that playing the guitar, playing a song on the guitar, was as good as meditation. Why? Because music, there's a magic in music. He said, music is the highest form of art, and for those who understand it, the highest form of worship. And so whenever we are focusing our attention, and of course, even to be a very good singer requires great focus of attention. But to sing and play guitar at the same time requires yet another level of control of your attention. And so these things, anything we do that requires, even to be a very good cook,
yes.
requires very good control of your attention, because you cannot stop in the middle of preparing a very good dish and become distracted and daydream out the window. The dish will be ruined.
That's why really good cooks don't want other people in their kitchens. Get out of my kitchen.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I interject something about music and especially singing?
Yes.
Singing in particular, rather than playing an instrument, it is, especially if you are singing properly, is controlled breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, my singing teacher, who's here in town, she calls her technique for teaching people to sing properly yoga for the voice. Because it is indeed, and I never thought about that before, but it really is controlled breathing. And just one other thing, they have found that people who sing together, like choirs and or even smaller groups, that within just a minute or two of their singing together, their heart rates sync up.
Yes. And so do their thought waves.
Yeah.
There was, thank you, Cindy. Was that all that you?
Yes.
Okay.
I have
I'll just mention quickly that there was a change of abbots at a French monastery, and the monastery supported itself by preparing and selling foods of various kinds, breads and jams and things like that. And so there was a lot of work involved, growing vegetables and making the vegetables into canned vegetables and so on. And So when there was a change of abbot, the prior abbot had held to the rule that had been practiced for centuries, that the monks gathered 4 times a day to chant together, 4 times a day. When the new abbot came in, and the monastery ran harmoniously, and they made a living. It was rough, but they made a living. When the new abbot came in, a lot of monks came to them. They had talked among themselves and said, look, let's reduce the number of times we chant together to twice a day, because that'll give us 2 more hours to devote to the work, and that'll help things. Well, the abbot agreed. Within a very short time, there was a great deal of quarreling among the various work groups in the monastery about allocation of resources and so on. And so the abbot was smart. He said, I need to prove to these guys that there was reason for what we did. So he called in an expert who used measurement of brain waves as well as breathing and heart rates and so on. To cut to the chase, this expert proved to these monks that their chanting together 4 times a day had tremendous benefits and was the reason for the harmony, because their heart rates synced together. Not only that, their brain waves synced together as they chanted together. And so they returned to the 4 times a day chanting. The arguing ceased, and harmony reigned again, and they once again were getting by. But they had their emphasis in the right place.
I have something I'd like to share.
Yeah.
Tai Chi Chuan, it encourages an attacker to bring the energy toward the person, and what it does is it redirects the energy.
Mm-hmm.
It directs it down. It can direct it up, or it can direct it around and send it back to the person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just it's knowledge about control of energy, and everything that we deal with is energy. And with Tai Chi, we're talking strictly about physical energy, but every day we deal with emotional energy.
Mm-hmm.
We deal with spiritual energy. We deal with negative energy, positive energy. And I have found that dealing with these concepts, you can use that to redirect the energy. Because if you try to stop energy,
Mm-hmm.
it takes as much energy to stop it as it was thrown out, or sometimes more.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes less energy to redirect it.
Yes.
And so things that come up that you see as a big problem, it's a big problem because it has a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you redirect it, it doesn't take a lot of energy.
Yes.
And you not only do you accomplish what you set out to accomplish, but you accomplish it in a harmonious way.
Amen.
You don't stop the person in a conversation. If you're having a conversation, you don't to try to contradict it. It's abusive and it's rough, gross. But to redirect it is subtle.
Mm-hmm.
Gets the job done. And
Swami Prabhupada used to tell us There's always a way to have a better conversation, no matter how you're approached. You can have a better conversation than if you engage the person at the level at which they're approaching you. You're so right, Robert. Redirect it. Thank you. And you're right about Tai Chi Chuan and that whole martial arts relationship that there is with Tai Chi Chuan. And it's also extraordinary that people who regularly practice Tai Chi Chuan together, they become very, very integrated with one another and develop a very great affection for one another. I can speak of this from experience, having practiced with a particular group for a couple of years in Glendale, California. So anything else from anyone? That was lovely, Robert. Thank you.
To elaborate a little on what Cindy said about people singing together and their hearts starting to coincide, I sometimes wonder if when people meditate together, if their brainwaves start to coincide. Because often when I've meditated with people, I often feel a bond with them afterwards.
I don't know of any. I know about the chanting together, but I don't know of any direct evidence for that, Ramadas, but I would be surprised if it weren't true. And it may be that the work that's being done out at Emory University with those monks from the Dalai Lama's group, that there has been some, I just don't know about it. So if you contacted either the monastery that's associated with it, I can never quite get the name right of that monastery, but you can look it up online and contact those monks and see if there is any scientific evidence, because the Dalai Lama very much believes in the scientific evidence that they're developing.
Right.
And he says when the scientific evidence demonstrably contradicts Buddhism, Buddhism must yield to the scientific evidence, which I thought was a remarkable thing for him to say. Anything else from anyone?
I just going again with the singing and the role of the sound in meditation. Just one last thing that I thought of was, in Hermann Hesse's book Siddhartha, he says, Om is the bow, the soul is the arrow, and Brahman is its target. Mm-hmm. So in chanting, and I just sent everyone this quote from Vivekananda in the chat, and from his Raja Yoga, where he says that what Cindy was saying, basically, that when we control our breath through pranayama, he says, next comes a beautiful voice. I never saw a yogi with a croaking voice. Mm-hmm. So that's like one of the first things I remembered about what he said, because he says we don't breathe properly in most of our day-to-day life, and that creates, the flow of oxygen throughout the body.
Yep. And the flow of prana. And the oxygen is one of the aspects of prana. Yeah. Breath and prana are so linked, and the vrittis so linked. Thank you, Divya. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, dears. It's 12:30 or a little after. So good of you to stay and engage with one another this way. It's so sweet. It's so sweet. And believe me, it does generate a bond among us. It really does. I know it because I know many of you outside these little gatherings. And I know that you have a strong feeling for one another and for this place as a result.
Yes, I look forward to the day when I can see you all again in person.
Yes, won't that be sweet? But we have to wait while Mother does her transformation. She's doing something, and for us to try to be willful in the face of it only invites a kind of disaster. So we have to be meek. We have to be meek. We have to be humble in the face of what Mother is doing. So until next time, which for those of us who wish to join it, there's a reading and discussion group of that book, Love Poems from God, tomorrow evening. And then Tuesday evening, the study of Holy Mother's life. Wednesday evening, we're studying Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. All the links for all that are available to you on the website, on the Facebook page, in the newsletter. So join us as you're so moved. In the meantime, let there be peace in outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let this infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. Om Hari Om Tat Sat. So may you go in Mother's loving and protective embrace. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Until next time, thanks for your contribution, James. That was a nice reading. Until next time, everyone.
Thank you, Hari Om.
Hari Om, Hari Om.
Hari Om.